I've spent many moons looking at these tomes all around me, and I finally found a connection in the Hyrule timeline that'll make it all make sense. Behold! I found it! It's the Lizalfos timeline, it's the one!
The history of Hyrule goes back pretty far, and I'm sure that most of you probably haven't heard the creation story of Hyrule. You see, it all began when... No, thanks a lot, Zelda, but I think I can handle this story by myself. You see, it all began when... No, Gebora. I will tell the story, thank you. You see, in the beginning there was... I give up. You see, in the beginning of the history of the Lizalfos... What? You know what that is, Zelda? You don't know anything about the Lizalfos? What about you, Gebora? You nothing? You don't know nothing? Okay, good. The Lizalfos start out their history in Skyward Sword, where while all of the future Hylians are busy living a very sophisticated aristocratic life in Skyloft, not touching the peasant dirt of the land creatures, the Lizalfos had to make their own way. Now before you come after me because of how primitive looking these Lizalfos are, you have to remember this is prehistoric times. Sure, the people in Skyloft might have clothes, but where did they get them from, huh? I bet you don't know. They probably made their clothes out of their fellow man for all you know. You thought the Lizalfos were primitive. Okay, they're less primitive than the things around them on the ground, jeez. You know, like rocks, or these things. And hey, despite having to live through the tribulations of living on the ground, which is apparently very dangerous, full of shadow creatures, you gotta remember that the Lizalfos have some level of decency because they decide to hide their dangly bits from you instead of just, you know. Not only that, but for real, the Lizalfos have some pretty sophisticated weaponry. Hephaestus would be proud of them because I'm pretty sure they didn't have any outside assistance, so they must have used a naturally occurring pool of lava from a dormant volcano to create their iron gauntlets, iron swords, iron scimitars, iron maces, iron class graduation ring, iron wrought fences, and of course, iron balls.
I would like to take a closer look at your big brass bulls. Okay, thank you.
These guys are also pretty clever because when they ran out of hands and went, you know, I really wish I could stab this thing more times than I already am, they said, let's attach a sword to our tail and we'll stab with that too. Or hey, why not a mace on the tail? Any Ankylosaurus fans out there? Hello? Shout out, represent please. Represent please. There we go, yeah, I thought so. So yeah, considering how early in Hylian history this is, these guys are actually pretty smart. And they have the capacity for creating civilizations too. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, for a long while, nothing did. Even Link going through and carving the names of the Lizalfos into various tombstones made no difference to their expanding civilization on the ground. Until the dark times, the era of chaos. You're probably thinking, the era of chaos? Big deal. I just went through the chasm of the abyss. I survived Blighttown. What's a little bit of era of chaos to spice up the Hylian timeline? But don't worry, the reason it's called the era of chaos is because it started the Hyrule Civil War over who would control the Triforce, because everybody knew about the Triforce and they're like, I want to be the king who has the Triforce. No, I want to be the king who has the Triforce. No, I'm gonna be Princess Zelda. I'm not even one of the kings, but the Triforce is gonna be mine. And I'm gonna wish that there was rupees underneath every single bush in Hyrule. And that's when the Hylian stock market crashed, but that's another discussion for another time. No, what we'll actually be discussing will sound a lot more like that textbook you had on biology back in high school. You know, the one with the little green tree frog on the leaf and it looked like it was about to jump, but it wasn't because it was a hardcover textbook and you were in the middle of class. Pretend that I am Bill Nye for a second. Hey there, everybody. So let's talk about the Lizalfos for a second. You see, over the course of the games between Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time, there's this little process that's going on called evolution. And basically, these Lizalfos were starting to transform as a result of the environments that they lived in. You put one Lizalfos in a desert area, and the heat makes it lose its ability to breathe fire because it wants to have a cooler internal body temperature. And as a result, the brawny frame that they used to have went away along with it. Now I want you to pretend for a moment that this hand is a hot Lizalfos, and and this hand is a cold Lizalfos. I rub them together real fast, and it generates friction, which is precisely what happened with the culture of the Lizalfos, where they suddenly had friction because both sides could not agree on how to live in a diverse coexistence. Now, the resulting border disputes were long and bloody. While the people of Hyrule were busy having a very complicated wish war over who would have the magical genie powers, the Lizalfos case is actually really quite simple. You see the Dynados were stronger than the Lizalfos with the brawn and all, and so they took their mountain. Now, war, as you may know, is considered a tiny bit dangerous, and the Lizalfos and Dynados weren't exactly keen on having a war. So, some of the Lizalfos and Dynados moved south to form what is essentially a hippie commune in the mountain known as Death Mountain. And in that commune, they eventually evolved into the Dodongos, after years of isolation in a very rugged environment. Say goodbye to bipedal motion and any kind of linguistic ability. Say hello to our new four-legged digging tank of Hyrule. Oh, you can't have him as a pet. It didn't take long for the Lizalfos to realize that they were fighting an uphill battle for that mountain, and so they decided to move away to the hippie commune on Death Mountain. And with the Lizalfos' cunning along with the Dodongos' digging ability, it didn't take long for them to figure out a way to burrow into the Goron's favorite cavern known as the Cavern, and kicked them out, turning it into Dodongo's cavern for good. From there, just like a dragon of the old times, the Lizalfos went out to the various temples to plunder gold and rupees and other riches so that they could hoard them in their stash. Did anybody tell them they can just cut grass and they'd have a really huge stash just doing that? Like, mowing the lawn is actually very, very lucrative here. Flash forward and there's the hero of time, Link. Or in my case, Ankh, for some reason. And so, raining justice upon our enemies, Ankh delivered the finishing blow unscrupulously to hundreds of denizens of the temples that dotted Hyrule. So did the Lizzies live? Here's where things get complicated. Welcome to the split timeline of Ocarina of Time! Thank you for playing. We have 3 wonderful doors that you can go through, each one with a very different fate for the species of the Lizalfos. Which door will it be? Do you pick option 1, where the hero of time dies and fails to defeat Ganon? Only the most sadistic and cruel of my audience members should be choosing this option. Or will you choose option 2, the Young Link timeline? A timeline that completely negates the effects of anything that Ganon might have done in the future, because it never happened. Or, for those of you that are still daring enough to be watching past this point, you can choose option 3, the Adult Link timeline, where Ganon does screw everything up, but at least Link was there to salvage some of it. So, you picked option 1! Do you like pain? Is that what this is? You chose this because you wanted to see the hero of time fail, didn't you? You're just that cynical. You don't think the hero of time could have won, did you? Did you? You thought he was gonna lose. Well, I'll have you know, Miss Debbie Downer, that he was gonna be just fine. If you'd have been just a little bit more careful, maybe he wouldn't have lost his last heart because you were trying to get a gold Skulltula that you didn't even need, because it's not even necessary to kill Danon. Like, seriously, screw the Skulltula house, we have bigger pork to roast. For the Lizalfos, this is a very long and confusing timeline, so I'm gonna try and boil it down into the basics. Pichu, no! Step 1. A link to the past. A confusing one. Ganon knew in order to take over Hyrule, he needed quite the army behind him in order to do it. So he went out and sought the best and most powerful that he could find. He went all the way to Termina where he found the Dynados, and he bribed them with land and money to come and fight for Team Ganon. Because the Dynados are territorial, stupid, and greedy, they agreed. Over the next 7 years, while Link was spending his time in a coma, they were busy assembling themselves into the most vicious fighting force the world has ever seen. Unhindered by a hero to stop them, the Dynados were able to spread their common grounds across all of Hyrule, and they slowly but surely eradicated the rest of the Lizalfos that lived there, claiming the lands in the name of the Dynados dynasty. At some point during that coma, Link decides to pass away, probably because he hasn't eaten in 7 years, and as a result, Ganon starts to weigh the exact things that he's gonna have to do in order to make his empire work. Ganon realized that the bribes that he gave to the Dynados were something that he couldn't follow through on because he needed that money in order to keep Hyrule afloat. After all, it was on the verge of bankruptcy, and he did just finish digging a volcano pit where the castle used to be so that he could build his tower on top of it using state-of-the-art levitation technology, all of which can be very, very taxing on a budget limitation. Totally accustomed with backstabbing anybody who ever works with him, Ganon works tirelessly with the dark forces in order to fight back the Lizalfos and eventually drive them to extinction. As for the source of the dark forces, Ganon had no qualms with opening a dark portal to the dark world where he'd pull all the monsters out and toss a bunch of humans there as prisoners just for the hell of it. This is where the events of Link to the Past take place. Now, while there are Dodongos left here, you must understand, any Dodongos that are left are something that Ganon more or less just plays around with. I mean, in the Tower of Hera, he basically turned it into a glorified Dodongo zoo, complete with fences for the Dodongos that fell for his silly traps. Link, leave the poor Dodongo alone. It's not doing. The PR team's not gonna like this. Eventually, Link succeeds in his quest and he manages to close off the dark portal leading into the dark world, causing all of the creatures that are on this side to be trapped back into the dark world. However, not every human was able to escape the grasp of the dark world and were left there stuck forever. Eventually, when the dark portal is reopened later down the timeline, they come back as the Daria and other lizard-like creatures. They are just humans who have been transformed into monsters as a result of no longer having a human form to return to. It is not because of a Lizalfos freedom-fighting underground squad that tries to combat Ganon during the worst of times. That is actually the plot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you should really fact-check because that's part of a completely different timeline. Maybe Breath of the Wild can shed some light on this one. Step 2, the Oracle of Ages and the Oracle of Seasons. Look, the Dodongo have been through way too much crap to let the hero of time be the one thing that stops their species from continuing their pitiful existence. And believe it or not, when they want to, the Dodongos can move pretty large distances rather quickly. They must be able to, otherwise how else would you explain them arriving in the sister kingdoms of Labrana and Holodrum? Answer is you can't. The truth is also that the Dodongos' involvement in these territories is minimal at best, because when they arrived, they actually landed on the territory that is now Crescent Island. They crossed a land bridge, the land bridge sunk under the water, and they were marooned there. And let me tell you, 100 years of being stuck, marooned on an island with nothing but fish and fruit to eat the entire time, you'd become a lot thinner, bipedal, amphibious, and capable of speech as well. I'm of course addressing the Dodongos' evolution into the decay. Basically like a smoother, smarter version of the Lizalfos, except they're smart enough to speak, but not smart enough to actually tell the difference between a Dodongo and a fish. Now, it's entirely possible that they're not familiar with their lineage, but honestly, I want to venture to say that the Dodongo you meet in Oracle of Ages, Dimitri, is actually a genetic throwback of the Decay, having the same language capabilities as a typical Decay, but having the appearance of a more primitive version of them, the Dodongos that came to the island in the first place. I guess Dimitri also had a genetic throwback brother who couldn't speak, who, much like his brother Dimitri, was tossed out to the ocean when they discovered he was deformed, and washed up on Holodrum, where he was promptly executed by a very vicious hero of time. Step 3, the Legend of Zelda. Not all the Dodongo went to Oracle Land, some of them stayed in Hyrule, where they lived and died. And they changed colors and looked more like Triceratops or some shit. Look, I can't explain everything. Step 4, the Adventure of Link. Here we are, option 2, Majora's Mask. Because Ganon was never really around to bribe the Lizalfos into leaving Termina, they're still living a happy life in the swamplands of Termina to the south of Clocktown. Because remember, the Lizalfos like damp, cold places. Additionally, the Lizalfos are able to thrive, given that Ganon is not there to extinguish their ever-so-fragile life, and frankly, neither is Link. So while the Lizalfos are able to pillage and plunder the temples to their heart's content until they become the next pirate king, the Lizalfos are able to sample some of the local cuisine. Eventually this leads us to step 2, Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess was a golden age for the Lizalfos civilization. I mean, just look at it. It's so dark and gritty, of course the monsters rule the land, why not? Since the Lizalfos and Dodongos were able to survive in their respective regions for so long unopposed, they eventually both grew into pretty respectable powers, and as a result, an alliance became inevitable. The cunning of the Lizalfos with the brute strength of the Dodongos made them a force to be reckoned with at Hyrule. And Ganon wasn't just scheming with the Twilight Realmers either in this game. He knew that the Dodongos and Lizalfos could threaten his control over Hyrule as well should he ever succeed, so he made sure to establish an alliance with them, promising them the Sky Keep in return for their loyalty. Even after Ganon's defeat in Twilight Princess to the hands of the hero of time, though ousted from their fortresses, the Lizalfos and Dodongos were still able to retreat into the woods, where they may or may not continue to live to this day. This is one of the only timelines where I can honestly say that the Lizalfos and Dodongos both make it off basically scot-free. Oh, and I guess the Dodongo turned into some kind of gecko thing? I don't know. Who knows where this timeline will take them. Option 3, the Wind Waker. So Ankh climbed the winding tower and stabbed Ganon in the face. Ooh, ow. Here comes the big moment. Zelda pulls out the ocarina, and Link goes, you know, I kinda like it here. Boom, adult Link timeline formed. Gosh, okay, so let's see what this jacks up this time. The Lizalfos and the Dodongos are all still in Hyrule, okay? They're all good, they're still happy. Broken, disorganized, and mostly dead, but happy. But Termina gets destroyed by a lunar apocalypse, so the Lizalfos actually don't have a home anymore. Great job, Link, with the whole heroing thing. You really outdone yourself this time. Set in these less than ideal situations, the Lizalfos and Dodongo begrudgingly worked together to try and eke out some kind of existence during this brief period of peace in Hyrule. After thousands of years of leaderless scavenging, at long last the great Ganondorf reappears in Death Mountain, and the Lizalfos are more than welcoming to their newfound leader to take back those gold and silver days of Hyrule when they had a chance. As you know, the Dodongos have always been of a more peaceful mentality than the Lizalfos, so it comes as no surprise that when they suddenly have their home shaken up by this giant Ganondorf, they're not too happy. Neither are the Gorons. Sensing danger on the wind, the Gorons and the Dodongos decide to be refugees and escape Hyrule while there's still time. In an act of desperation, the king of Hyrule with the power of the Triforce intentionally floods the entirety of Hyrule, preventing a bloody war. Mr. King, sir, I think that there's a better way of doing this than encasing the entire population of Hyrule in a watery tomb. Fortunately, the stars of our show, the Dodongos, made it off okay. Lizalfos and Dodongos, not so much. Kinda gone. Gorons end up showing up as merchants in Wind Waker, coming from a faraway land, and the Dodongos are mysteriously absent. Why is that? Could it be that they're on the faraway land that we can visit in a future game? I think it is. That's why we're moving on to Step 2, Phantom Hourglass. Spooky. The Dodongos actually beat the Gorons to the first piece of land that had the primest of rock. The Gorons were not about to roll over, however, to the Dodongos for their favorite piece of land yet again. After some significant wrestling, the Gorons managed to kill off most of the smaller Dodongos and trap all the larger ones in a large chamber. They then took what was probably called the Dodongo Island at that time and turned it into Goron Island. How's that for a little taste of your own medicine, Dodongos? Do you like it? Do you like it, huh? Many years passed, and during that time, the Dodongos trapped in their chamber started to die off of natural causes or starvation. Eventually, all that was left was one, Dodongo Rongo. The last Dodongo. And then one day, Link, the hero of time, showed up to that island, seeking a precious jewel. And so he went into the chamber where Dodongo Rongo was, and he killed him for the jewel that was embedded in his back. And so, the last Dodongo went extinct. Step 3. Spirit Tracks. This is the part where I'd normally talk about the Dodongos. However, I can't anymore because they're extinct. Because Link made the entire species extinct because he wanted a stinking rock.
When the last chamber's past, seeking the last purest metal, and the final blow is cast, leeching the life straight out through him. Then look into his eyes so red, where the ages are carved and worn. Look and see his heart stop beating. It's the last Dodongo. Not alive.
Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, please remember to hit the like button as well as hitting the subscribe button if you'd like to see more videos like this one in the future. If you're new to the channel, you can also go to this playlist over here and you'll be able to watch my videos in the past that include content like this, as well as parodies, reviews, top 10s, a whole bunch of stuff. There's also a Patreon and a Discord server with links located in the description. Alright guys, that's all I got time for now. Thank you for watching and see you guys next time.